In conversation with my buddy Mir, I had mentioned that I had seen a blurb from a news report mentioning how the Chinese yuan was set to supplant the dollar as the global unit of currency. And he thought that was interesting, so I told him I'd see if I could find that article and pass it on to him. But in the process of doing this, I made a rather startling discovery, if you will. I'll pass on to you. And so I'm going to read what I wrote to him. So in doing a search for a decent news source on the topic of the Chinese yuan becoming the world's reserve currency, I came across this article just now. Notice in the debate section that despite the overwhelming sentiment from the public who voted being against the Chinese yuan, the write-up here is quite positively slanted in favor of the yuan against the dollar and treats it as though this is going to be a mere inevitability. It was a wow moment for me because of a trail I had just run down the other day when I was passing you those vids on CERN and the Germanwings crash in the Alps. Speaking of videos put up by YouTuber FaceLikeTheSun. In the longer of those two videos, the guy speaks about a deja vu moment he had when the dignitaries of certain European countries were arriving at the crash scene as shown on the Fox News feed. There is the President of France and the Chancellor of Germany and others. Well, the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, caught my eye because of her curious hand movements in the video. She came out with her jacket open, and as the footage rolls, you can see her reach to pull up her zipper, but her hands do something strange in the process. As the footage in that video was cut off, I searched the original Fox News report and saw a bit of an extended cut where she goes to zip up her coat and then her hands pause and unmistakably throw up the Illuminati Freemason gang sign of the Diamond Pyramid. This had jumped out at me when watching the video I sent you, but the commentator made no mention of it in his video. Scrolling down to the comments, I came across one where a woman said that the scene this guy felt was deja vu was reminiscent of the 2015 cover of The Economist, steeped in Illuminati and predictive programming imagery. I looked up the 2015 cover of The Economist and came across the following article, which has some good insights as well as telling you who owns and operates that publication. Right off, I saw Chancellor Merkel standing between Putin and Obama throwing up the same hand sign as she did in the Fox News footage. Interesting. Now, how does any of that tie into the yuan usurping the dollar? Well, I'm not saying it does, just that there is a common trail here. The enclosed article is from, guess who? The Economist. While other news sources poo-poo any notion of the yuan surpassing the dollar, the subheading on this article reads, "This house believes that the yuan will be the world's main reserve currency within 10 years. To the left of this statement is a symbol for the yuan next to a hook and chain used to load/unload metal on/off freighters, clearly indicating to me the fact substantiating their belief in the yuan is China's industry compared to the U.S.'s lack thereof." The globalists know the true state of the economy regardless of whatever useful fiction they put out, like Rothschild letting out the rumor that the Duke of Wellington had lost to Napoleon in an era where news traveled slowly, which caused a panic on the London stock market, which he capitalized on to essentially take control of that institution 200 years ago. Point being, the globalists know the only thing holding the dollar in place is the assurance that we are in the state of economic recovery, despite all evidence to the contrary, and the incredulity of the stockbrokers and general public, like those who scoffed at the thought of a global flood in Noah's day, that anything could happen to the dollar. After all, it has weathered every storm for decades. They know China is amassing gold reserves while it is not known by the public if the U.S. even has any gold reserves whatsoever. Speculation is that Fort Knox stands empty. They know the U.S. has little to none industry left, while much of everything you buy in the West is made in China. If a nation has no gold and no industry, whatever economy it has cannot have a foundation. As the psalmist says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Now these ties would all be very interesting in and of themselves, but another highly intriguing item is seen in going back to that Economist cover. Scroll down to the headings Clueless Boy and also China. Very interesting. Right under the Pied Piper, we see a young boy with dumbfounded look on his face. He is watching a game called Panic. The words Federal Reserve and Chi, which probably stands for China, are on top, while the words Green Light and CIS, which probably stands for ISIS or Crisis, are at the bottom. The little boy watches as this twisted game of Plinko unfolds the same way the clueless masses watch powerlessly while various events unfold on mass media. As the name of the game states, the ultimate goal is to cause panic around the world, as crises are almost randomly generated by those who control the game. And that's on a magazine cover owned by the Rothschilds. There's China. A panda bear wearing a China flag Speedo while flexing its muscles is a rather clear way of portraying the fact that China is gaining power. Next to it is a sumo wrestler holding a big battery on which the polarities, plus and minus, are clearly indicated. Are they alluding to a switch in polarity and world power from the west to the east? I have seen these people put out enough intentional disinfo to try to discourage and diffuse their agenda, so I will stop short of making any predictions myself and leave all that in God's hands. But it is interesting to me how this all tied together and how I was led toward it piecemeal. By the way, I still can't find the original news blurb I saw talking about the Chinese yuan being put forward by the Chinese central bank as a competitor/usurper of the dollar. But had I not seen it, I would not have found the Economist bit. What does it all mean? Thankfully, there are verses preceding verse 3 of Psalm chapter 11. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold. His eyelids try the children of men. The Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence his soul hateth. Upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire, and brimstone, and an horrible tempest. This shall be the portion of his cup. For the righteous Lord loveth righteousness. His countenance doth behold the upright. Be encouraged.